Today is Monday the 17th of February and I've just become bankrupt, and I did it with the help of the Irish Mortgage Holders Organisation, and these guys are a tremendous debt advocacy group. They look after people and they bill you according to your means, and because I am a genuine bankrupt, they haven't charged me any fees whatsoever. So I want to say, first of all, thank you very much to the guys here. They've given me huge time and energy and advice, and just the freedom to pass all my worries onto them. It's fantastic. And they haven't charged me a penny, and they are amazing. And they're especially amazing. They were set up by David Hall some time ago. He first started a different bank, New Beginnings, which was also a debt advocacy group. And then he migrated to this organisation. And the reason why he did this was twofold. First of all, he recognised early on that there was a huge debt problem in this country, and that despite the claim of Enda Kenny that we all partied, a lot of people didn't party. A lot of people got into debt because they were in that certain age group between their mid-30s and mid-40s where they're either growing a business, they needed to borrow, or they had to move because they had to start off in a flat and they maybe had some children, whatever. And they did. I mean, debt in everyday life is not a horrible thing. I mean, most people take on debt as a sign of becoming an adult. You get a car loan, you get a loan to extend your house, you get a mortgage. Debt in normal life is a badge of honour. You're becoming a grown-up, so it's pretty cool. And it's only become inverted because of what's happened in this country. Charles Haughey once said, "A rising tide raises all ships." And he's wrong. Because do you know what? In this country, when we had the Celtic Tiger, the people that benefited the most were those at the top. And we know this. We saw the partying that was going on. For the average person, the average rank and file, they weren't partying. They were working. I did raise huge debt, as it happens, nearly $1 million. But I was a working mum with 2 kids with my business, and it all seemed very reasonable and practical at the time. I wasn't flying around in helicopters, and I wasn't, wearing designer gowns or doing mad stuff, whatever. Like the rest of the population, I was living my life as I thought I should be. But because things are more expensive, that's how debt accumulates. And then, the same way that a rising tide doesn't raise all ships, when it crashes, it also impacts the population inequally, because the people at the top, the politicians were all pensioned off or got new jobs. The developers, they still happen to keep their second or third homes, or their wives do, and they go bankrupt in different countries where the regimes are more gentle. The top civil servants, pensioned off, and when we were told that we couldn't claw back those huge pensions because they were under contract law. But other countries have done things. Other countries have brought in laws where you can actually introduce new law to maybe retax that exorbitant pension, and especially if those people have overseen a descent into darkness, as we've seen here in Ireland. And it's very galling then for the average rank and file, because there's always this thing about we must carry the burden of austerity. But the burden of austerity is falling on the bottom of the populace, because the middle doesn't really exist anymore. It's people at the bottom who are scrambling to stay in touch and to hang on to things, and they're getting cuts here and cuts there. And the people who now need the help, the debt help, they're not getting it, because there's all these fingers being pointed, and there's banks use rhetoric like strategic default. What does that mean? I mean, that is crazy. Very few people actually strategically default in their family home. That is just like, that's spin. Or terms like debt forgiveness. Forgiveness? If you're a commercial organisation, of course you get money written off. So this is ridiculous, all these terms that are used. And then the biggest thing that's happened, well, 2 things have happened. One is there's been all these tax cuts and all these new property taxes brought in. And that's unfair because it hits the people who are least able to bear it. And the second thing that's happened is that the new laws that were brought in, they were supposed to ameliorate the situation and help those in debt. They don't, because the first set of new laws that were brought in last year was the Insolvency Service, and that was a means to extricate people from their debt. It doesn't work for 3 reasons. The first is that the banks still have the veto. The second is that you have to pay your PIP, and the PIPs are private individuals, and the PIP will cost anything between 4 and 10 grand for a basic PIP. And you can't go to a parallel public service. So if you haven't got 4 or 8 grand, you can't get in. And thirdly, the basic premise of the Insolvency Service is predicated on the fact that there's a pot of money. And your PIP, if you can afford them, will say, right, we allow you certain living expenses that the government decrees, and on top of after that, we'll pay your different creditors and you pay the PIP. Now the problem is, those bright people in the government who actually brought in this law, they couldn't fathom that people would be on such low incomes. So when I tried to enter the Insolvency Service, which was the natural thing for me to do, I didn't have enough money to make even the guidelines of what I should be living on, because the guidelines for a woman with 1 dependent child is $1,800 a month. I'm living on 1,300 a month. So I couldn't even get into the service. So it's either very clumsy law, with the politicians not realising that actually there are people in this country who are surviving on a lot less than, the guidelines, or else it's I don't care law. It's only made for people who have large incomes and who can afford the best PIPs, and then who can still keep their trophy homes because they have the money to do it. And then the last thing is the bankruptcy, which I've just become today. And, they say anyone can do a bankruptcy, whatever, but actually it's very difficult because there isn't a special bankruptcy court. It's held in the High Court. So you have all these judges and barristers and solicitors, and they talk about lists here and lists there, and there's a whole rating at the top. It is extremely intimidating. If I was there by myself, I wouldn't know what to say or when to jump up, or do I talk to the judge or don't I talk to the judge? I wouldn't know what to say. And it's just, the government says, oh, anyone can do it, you can do it yourself, whatever. You can't. You need people to help you. And I've used, thank the Lord, IMHO to help me in this process because I couldn't have done it otherwise. And I just think it's so disingenuous to think that it's easily done. It's not easily done. And then plus also, I live in Wicklow. If I hadn't got the IMHO putting in my paperwork, if I make mistakes, I have to go up and down the whole time. You have to go to the High Court. You can't do it locally with a public service. So there are so many flaws and so many things going wrong. And the final thing I want to say on this particular subject, the reason why I keep on talking, is that there are so many financially inspired suicides in this country. There are 2 suicides a day, and many of them, I don't know how many, but many of them are attributable to money. And we all know people who've killed themselves over money, especially men who feel the burden of being the breadwinner, and then they lose their job, or they get sick, or they get divorced, and they see everything that they've worked for being taken from them. And it is not worth a life. And I quote again and again Fiacre Daly and his brave wife, Stephanie, from Priory Hall. His life that was such a waste. And it worked to an extent because the government stepped in. They said they couldn't, and then all of a sudden they could. But, what will she tell her children in years to come? Why did their father die? But it's so wrong. We have to remove the stigma of debt, and we have to help people.